UFC Fight Night 251, Cannonier versus Rodrigues takes place this weekend, and today I'm going to go through the entire card, prelims all the way down to the main event, give you my predictions, break down the fights, tell you who I think is going to win, who's not going to win. I've been doing pretty good on picks. My last two cards, I went 9-2 on the Saudi card and 8-3 on UFC 312. So we're doing great. Let's hope we can keep this momentum, make more money for ourselves. I'm not responsible for your money gain or loss. I'm just a boy. This card has a lot of tricky fights, so let's just jump into it and give you my reasons for why I got the people I got winning. The first fight is Julia Avila versus Jacqueline Cavalcanti. Julia Avila hasn't fought since December 2023. Red flag. It was a loss to Miesha Tate. Another red flag. She has one fight in the last 3.5 years. She has 3 red flags. Jacqueline's on a 6-fight win streak, which is very nice, very nice. Her last 2 fights being split decisions kinda scares me, but I definitely do favor her all around as a fighter and just the experience and the activity way more than Julia Avila. I'm going Jacqueline Cavalcanti to get this one done via unanimous decision. Because it's a woman's fight, it's probably going to be a decision, but I'm assuming a 30-27. Walter Walker is taking on Don'Tale Mayes. I believe Don'Tale Mayes is a favorite in this fight. He's coming off a loss to Shamil Gaziev, but that's okay because Shamil Gaziev's literally the heavyweight champ. He's a heavyweight that goes to a lot of decisions, which is strange because, he's a scary-looking man. But yeah, he goes to a lot of decisions. His last finish was all the way back in 2023, and it was against Andrei Arlovski. I could have finished Andrei Arlovski in 2023. Yeah, I just checked. He's a favorite, and I don't really understand why. Walter Walker is 12-1. He beat Junior Taffa in his last fight via submission. It was a weird outcome. I think they, got into it after the fight even. He has way more finishes in his career than Don'Tale Mayes. I think he has a lot more weapons, a lot more ways to finish a fight. Clearly, he has submissions. He can knock you out on the feet. I favor him in this one, and I think he's going to get a TKO in the second round, so I'm going Walter Walker as an underdog pick. Vince Morales versus Elijah Smith. This one's a little bit interesting. Vince Morales was on a 5-fight win streak before entering the UFC. He lost his debut to Taylor Lapalus. He's 12 years older than Elijah Smith, who's making his UFC debut. Elijah Smith looked really solid on the Contender Series. He has solid wrestling, solid stand-up. This one is a little bit nervous for me because Vince Morales has a lot more experience, but I am going to lean Elijah Smith to get this one done, probably by unanimous decision, maybe a 29-28. I think he just has better potential than to lose to a guy like Vince Morales, but these are the tricky fights, because Vince Morales has a lot more experience. He's older. Elijah Smith's still like a kid, so we'll see. Go on Elijah Smith by decision, though. Gabriel Bonfim versus Chaos Williams. Oh, this is so tough. Chaos won his last 2 fights, and he's really exciting. His last loss was to Randy Brown, who's proven to be quite a good fighter. He only has lost, recently to guys like Randy Brown and like Michelle Pereira. Pretty high-level fighters, higher up in the rankings, maybe not top 15, but close to it. He's never lost by finish, which I like for him. I think that's a big advantage against a guy like Bonfim, who's shown he can be a finisher. And then you look at Bonfim, and he's coming off a decision win against Ange Lusa, which I don't rate that much. He lost to Nicholas Dalby, which isn't anything that crazy. Nicholas Dalby has proven to be a guy who can get finishes like that. But I think Chaos Williams kind of presents the same problem that a Nicholas Dalby can, but I think he's better than Nicholas Dalby. I kind of have a feeling Chaos Williams is going to be able to catch him and maybe put him out in the 3rd round. I'm going Chaos Williams to get this one done. I don't know what the odds are on this, but I think they're going to be really close. I'm leaning Chaos Williams 3rd round TKO. Rafael Estevam versus Jesus Aguilar. Estevam is coming off a debut win over Charles Johnson, which is honestly a very impressive debut win. And he looked really good on the Contender Series. He's undefeated. He's shown he has finishing potential. He's facing Aguilar, who himself is on a 3-fight winning streak. His last loss was to Tatsuro Taira, which is totally fine, They're going to lose to that guy. That guy's a top 5 flyweight right now. The odds on this aren't very close. Estevam was a pretty big favorite. And I do think I'm going to go with him to get this one done, either by a submission or a 29-28 decision. I think he is the better fighter, and I think he has more ways and more tools to win this fight. I like his chances because of what I've seen from him so far. Bear with me. Jared Gordon versus, is that Caio Fernandez? I don't know how to say that. Caio? It can't be Caio. Gordon's coming off a decision loss to Nasrat Haqparast that I thought he clearly won. He's honestly a really solid fighter who's never going to be ranked, but he's good outside of the top 15. He has decent power at lightweight. He's all around pretty good. He usually does just a little bit more than his opponent to get decision wins. He's fighting Fernandez. I'm not even going to bother with the first name. And I honestly don't know a lot about him. I know more about a lot of the other fighters than this guy on this card, which is a little bit scary. He's coming off a TKO win, but he has lost to Mark DeCasey, which I don't think is a good look. I see he's had a good amount of finishes in his career. He's 29, but I think Jared Gordon's going to be a step ahead. I think his experience, veteran status in the game is going to be enough to get him the unanimous decision. I think this is the perfect kind of guy that Jared Gordon gets unanimous decision wins over. So I'm going Jared Gordon as a veteran to just outpoint him, get it done. Probably a 30-27. I think he's going to win every round just by a little bit. Get the win in Jared Gordon fashion. Angela Hill versus Caitlin Souza. Oh, God, women's fighters. Okay. Fights like this are so annoying in the women's division. Hill's literally 17-14. I'd have a better record in the UFC. She lost her last fight to Tabitha Ritchie. She's 40 now. She's fighting Caitlin Souza, who's decent. She's won her last 2 fights. She's younger. I think this is where we see Angela go on a little 2-fight losing streak, which she doesn't do a lot. She usually wins, lose, wins, lose, wins, lose. I don't know. I think this is where she goes on a little 2-fight slide. I'm picking Caitlin Souza. I think she's better. Women's fights are so tough. These are the matchups that Angela Hill wins, and it's so annoying. I'd lean Souza personally, but with matchups like this, it isn't a bad idea to just go with the underdog if you're putting money on it, because they're always so 50-50. But I am going Caitlin Souza by unanimous decision. Now we move up to the main card. Connor Matthews taking on Jose Delgado. Connor Matthews just came off of a TKO loss. He's been streaky in his short career so far. Jose Delgado's making his UFC debut after doing really well on Dana White's Contender Series. He's a finisher. He has 8 finishes in 8 fights, 4 coming by submission, 4 coming by knockout TKO. He's been super active in other organizations before joining the UFC, which I also credit very highly. I like what I've seen from him. I think he's going to catch Matthews probably in the second round with a TKO here. I think he's a finisher, like we said, 8 wins, 8 finishes. I like what I've seen from him. I think he's going to get this one done. Matthews seems a little too streaky in my opinion. I favor Delgado massively in this fight. Rodolfo Vieira versus Andre Petroski. Now this is an interesting one. Vieira is coming off 2 submission wins in a row, and that's one of his big strengths is the submission. He's lost to Chris Curtis and Anthony Hernandez. What do those guys have in common? They're top 15 level fighters. Anthony Hernandez, I think, has potential to be a top 5 guy. 9 of his 10 wins are by submission. Petroski, on the other hand, he's put back-to-back wins together following his back-to-back losses. But the guys he's losing to just aren't the same competition as Vieira's. I think Vieira's pretty solid. I think he's going to do what he does best. I think he's going to be able to catch a submission on Petroski, probably in round 1 or round 2. I favor him to get this one done by submission. Ishmael Bonfirm versus Nazim Sadikov. Okay, this one's interesting. Bonfirm is coming off of a win, and he was on quite the run in other promotions. He's lost to guys like Moicano back in the day, and his most recent loss was to Benoit Saint Denis, who is a top 15 lightweight. But before that, he was on a 13-fight win streak. That's majorly impressive no matter what organization you're in. He's really dangerous, but so is Sadikov. He's on a 9-fight win streak right now. And if you count his last fight, he drew against Visalan Borshev, who we saw fight at UFC 312 against Tom Nolan, and he got outclassed. I do rate his finishing potential a little bit higher than Bonfirm's right now. He's only got a decision once in his 9 wins. This is honestly one of the toughest fights for me to choose. These guys are both really good and really skilled, but I think I'm leaning the experience of Bonfirm to get this one done. And I think his losses are to just much better competition than Sadikov's. I'm going with Bonfirm to get this one done. Probably a second round TKO. Edmund Shabazian versus Dylan Budka. These guys are both very... mid. They're both mid. They're both guys that win one, lose one, win one, lose one. It's literally like Angela Hill. I'm sorry, that's bad. Shabazian's coming off of a loss to the GOAT GM3. Before that, he had a KO over AJ Dobson. He's very much a fighter who's out to get the finish, or he gets finished himself. Dylan Budka is coming off 2 losses himself. He's still pretty young, but I do like the experience of Shabazian a lot more. I also don't think his finishing potential is on the same level as an Edmund Shabazian. I think Edmund Shabazian probably catches him, gets this one done probably late second round, maybe early third round. I definitely favor Edmund Shabazian based on just skills, competition, experience, the usual things I usually mention in this prediction, to be honest. And in the co-main event, Calvin Kattar versus Yusuf Zalal. This one is really interesting for me to break down, maybe even more so than the main event. So I know Zalal's a pretty big favorite, and he's been on a really good run. 6 in a row right now. In his last fight, he submitted Jack Shore, which is a really, really good win, honestly, that I rate quite highly. Calvin Kattar's on a 3-fight losing streak. That does include his freak injury loss to Arnold Allen. He also got dominated in his last fight at UFC 300 by Aljamain Sterling. He could not stop the wrestling, and I know that has to be Zalal's strategy. Get the takedown, try to go for a submission, because he does have a lot of submissions in his resume. But I'm looking at his fights, and I'm seeing he loses to good strikers. Guys like Sean Woodson have beat him. I see a world where Kattar can use his experience and use his boxing and just be able to stuff some of those takedowns and whoop Zalal on the feet. Zalal's good, don't get me wrong, but just because Calvin Kattar's been taken down and was dominated by Aljo does not mean Zalal's going to be able to do that. Aljamain Sterling is such an elite grappler. You guys saw what he did in his fight against Movsar Evloev. Literally tested Movsar to his absolute max. Was the toughest fight of Movsar's career. Insanely competitive fight. People aren't on the level of Aljamain Sterling, especially Yusuf Zalal. I'm going with the underdog pick. This one's scary. I know he's on a decline. I know he's older. I know Zalal's doing really well right now. I'm picking Calvin Kattar to get this one done, to box the bloody head off of him to a 29-28 decision. I think Zalal probably gets the takedown in one of the rounds, kind of just holds him there, does some good work, but I do think Calvin Kattar is going to be able to outbox him in 2 of those rounds and clearly get the job done. I don't know. This one's definitely one of the harder ones to pick for me, but I'm going Calvin Kattar as an underdog. I don't mind his chances in this one. And in the main event, Jared Cannonier versus Gregory Rodrigues, RoboCop himself. Cannonier's 40. He's lost his last 2 fights. He lost a very early stoppage against Nasruddin Imavov, who's proving to be absolutely elite. And he recently got lit up by Kyle Baralho. Baralho is proving to be pretty elite as well. We're kind of not able to determine how good he is yet because that was his last fight. But he looks like he's going to be an elite fighter in middleweight. Gregory Rodrigues is somehow only 32 years old. I thought that man was like at least 52. He's on a little 3-fight win streak right now. He's powerful. He's gotten knockouts over 60% of the fights he's won. He's great on the feet and even has a few submissions in his resume. They're trying to push him up the rankings, and for Cannonier, it looks like they're ready for him to retire. He's definitely going to need a crazy run to get back to the title. I don't think he'll ever get back to the title. I don't think anyone believes he'll get back to the title, not even Cannonier. Last time I checked, RoboCop, Gregory Rodrigues, is a favorite by kind of a good margin, and I get why, but you got to realize, like, let's see, Cannonier's losing to guys like Imavov, Kyle. Even back then, his last loss before that was to Robert Whittaker. You know what these guys have in common? They're elite. But then he has wins over guys like Marvin Vettori. He's even beat Sean Strickland in a competitive decision. I don't think he's that far removed from still being a good fighter. That Vettori fight did not happen that long ago. He looked fine against Imavov and Baralho. Of course, he lost, but he didn't look completely lost. This is a compelling fight. Cannonier himself has a lot of power. I think a lot of the people who are putting money on this have seen Jared Cannonier get cracked and just his chin's going. But you got to realize he hasn't been flatlined. It took an early stoppage against Imavov to stop that fight, so he wasn't even out of it. Baralho took until like the 5th round to drop him as bad as he did, and he still survived and went to decision. Tell me why I'm feeling a Jared Cannonier upset here. I'm leaning a decision. I think he's going to be able to outpoint RoboCop and just outpace him. Cannonier has a good gas tank on him. I think he's a better fighter still, and I think he only loses to guys who prove to be elite, and I just don't think Gregory Rodrigues is elite. He's got crazy power. I think he's good, but I don't think he's one of these top 5, top 3 guys. So I'm leaning Jared Cannonier, honestly. I think he's going to be able to outpoint him, get maybe like a 49, 46, 48, 47 decision, and he's going to kill Gregory Rodrigues' hype right now. To be fair, I don't know why Gregory Rodrigues is getting this fight. This is really just not a good main event. But I am going Jared Cannonier. Call me crazy. But that's it for my predictions for the fights taking place this weekend. If you agreed with me, let me know in the comments below. Who are your locks of the card? Remember, I am not responsible for your money gain or loss. But if I gain you money, that's pretty awesome. Just saying. I'm doing decent to start the year. So, yeah. Thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. See you later. Peace. Have a good one.